All right, welcome back to the channel. Mike Tyson looking buff, looking swole, looking ripped, at 50 plus years old. And, and an MMA fighter thinks he knows how, and it's called the juice. So Mike Tyson is accused of being on steroids, and that's pretty much being the only way he could look like that at that age. Let's discuss that, whether there's some truth to that or not, in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So, as we know, steroids is a huge issue in boxing and in sports in general. And Mike Tyson is one of the biggest icons in the sport of boxing. And as a result, when he said that he was going to come back, whether it was going to be a regular fight or official fight, or whether it was going to be, an exhibition match against somebody, it was big news all over the place. And part of the big news, right, that kicked it off was how he looked, right? You see Mike Tyson walk out with his shirt is off. The dude is buff, man. And he is, he's muscular, he's ripped, right? At 50, I don't know, is he 54, 53, 54 years old? And now as somebody my age who's a little younger than him, but in the same ballpark, I looked at him like, God dog, man, I must be lazy. Dude, he's got some crazy genetics. You know what I mean? Because it is difficult to get, when you get to that age, to shed body fat. It is much harder, right? But that doesn't mean that Mike Tyson couldn't have worked his way to that he couldn't have gone vegan, whatever he did, right, to get that. Now, there's definitely ways that maybe he could be built like that do not involve performance-enhancing drugs. That said, he's probably doing them. Okay, that said, he's probably doing them. Now, that's my opinion. That's not a fact. So I'm being very clear on that. It's my opinion. Then once that guy said that, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And why would it make sense? Because Mike Tyson is puffing a lot. You know what I mean? He's puffing a lot. He's or better yet, here, let me just cut to the chase. Mike Tyson said, maybe it might have been 3 years ago, no more than 3 years ago, when asked about the problems of steroids in the heavyweight division, Mike Tyson said that it's impossible to be a top athlete right now if you're not on performance-enhancing drugs. That's what he said, okay? He's saying you have to use performance-enhancing drugs to compete with these guys. So if he said that, which he did, right, it's reasonable to believe that if he was considering a boxing comeback, that he might do something that would, right? He would do something that would help him compete. And if he believed that you can't compete without him, then logic would tell you that he would be willing to do that. So you take that willingness to do that along with the way that his body looks, and there's your not proof, but the basis of the suspicion for him being able to do it. Now, there's another scenario in boxing where this had happened before, pretty much just like it. Tyson Fury was in an interview on IFL TV in around 2014, and he was asked by Kugan Cassius about performance-enhancing drugs in boxing or in sports. And he said, well, how I think somebody had tested positive for it. Somebody tested positive for it, and he was asked the question about this guy testing positive. And he said to Kugan Cassius, that it didn't surprise him and that everybody's on it. He's like, everybody in professional sports on it. It's either you're cutting weight or it's to put on muscle, but everybody's on it. And then so Tyson Fury, then when he said, well, not you, you're not talking about you, right? Because obviously you're not on it, right? With Kugan Cassius pretty much pushing him to clean that up. So when he asked Tyson Fury to clean it up, Tyson Fury looks at him like, gives this look like, looks up, those tells, like, man, please. That look like, man, please. Everybody's on it. I'm doing it. Everybody's gonna. If everybody else doing it, I'm doing it too. I ain't gonna be the only one out there not doing it, right? That's what his expression and his whole tone in that conversation made me believe. Then he he brushed it off and said, well, no, not me, not those for me. I use other types of drugs. I use, maybe a little of the green stuff, maybe a little of the white stuff. That's my stuff. It's not that, right? Everybody in sports but me. Right? I just do these things. So obviously, dude, the guy was saying that he did performance enhancing drugs. So, but you don't have to wonder whether or not he meant that or not, because subsequent to that, he tested positive for performance enhancing drugs, nandrolone specifically, for a test taken after the Christian Hammer fight and before his first major championship shot against Vladimir Klitschko. Right? So Mike Tyson and Tyson Fury both said the same thing, right? Both said the same thing, that everybody in boxing does it. And then they're both all in boxing. And one guy actually tested positive for it. Now, Mike Tyson hasn't, and Mike Tyson's not going to be tested, but more than likely, dude, that guy, yeah. I tend to think that the MMA guy that said that might actually have, a point. Now, here's the other thing. The MMA guy whose name I don't recall, and most people watching my videos aren't going to know who he is, but you can look up, if I remember to put it in the description box, I will. But you can also just look it up. Mike Tyson accused of steroids. It's going to pop up. But what the guy said, hey, good for him, is what he said. The MMA guy said, hey, you know what it is? If you got to do it, hey, good for him. Right? So the attitude that the guy had about Mike Tyson is the biggest problem that there is in boxing. I'm going to do a video a little later today that's going to come up a little later today about Alejandro Jimenez, who tested positive for performance enhancing drugs in a WBC heavyweight women's fight against Franchon Cruz DeJourn. If I killed her name, please forgive me. And what they just did, they gave the belt back after a very long time, because that happened months and months and months ago. They gave in the what do you call it? In the middle of what we're going through, right, with the stuff that happened to Mr. Floyd, they give the belt back. They give the belt back to Francouz Cruz, right, who lost her belt to somebody, Alejandro Jimenez, that tested positive for performance enhancing drugs. But then they also, so it took them that long to give the belt back. And then second, after that, they gave her 9 months, a 9-month suspension. What is that going to do? She ain't going to fight in the next 9 months. Number one, boxing is going to officially come back in next week. You know what I mean? Like next week. There's going to be behind closed doors boxing matches. If she doesn't participate in that, shoot, it might be 9 months before she would have got a fight anyway. It's just a ridiculous slap on the wrist. So, it's just the prevalence of performance enhancing drugs and the attitude that people have about it it's worse than the judges. It's worse than the issues with the judges. It's worse than issues with the commissions, the sanctioning bodies, right? Like the fact that there's all these sanctioning bodies, that there's too many weight classes, right? They divide boxing up into this just ridiculous, caricature of an organization, because there's not enough quality fighters to justify all of these sanctioning bodies. I mean, I can understand if there was, in every weight class, if there was 50 top level fighters that everybody wanted to see having 4 sanctioning bodies, it's just ridiculous. It's no reason for all of that other than the profit of the individual people that can convince somebody to buy their belt from them. But this performance enhancing drug issue, man, this goes to the fundamental risk in boxing that you can pass away. And it just is amazing to me how blasé people are about it, how just, how much they feign concern about it, but yet go on out of their way to make sure that whoever does it gets absolutely no punishment whatsoever. But, that's the world we live in. But is Mike Tyson on the juice? I don't know. But if he's trying to box, he better. He better. He better, because I'm telling you, at 51 years old, dude, that recovery time don't work, man. Like that's the thing for me. Like, and I didn't say it earlier in the video, but that's the thing with me that I'm like, hold on, man. Yeah, if you worked out like that, you could get built like that, right? You diet right, you build your muscle like that. But do you know how long it would take you to do that? If you can't work out every day, you can't work out 2 times a day. When you're 50 years old, 55 years old, you can't work out 2 times a day. You can't have a sparring. You can't, your body's not going to respond to that. Dude, you're going to swell up. You're going to swell up. Old injuries are going to get inflamed, and you're going to need significant amounts of time and break to let your body heal, right? But what does steroids do? Helps you recover. It gets rid of your issues with your recovery time so that you can work out multiple times a day, keep those calories burning, right? And keep that muscle building and keep your inflammation down and be able to go back at it tomorrow, right? So it's not just whether or not his body is he is a mesomorph and has the ability to build build muscle, because he does. And he always had that on him. But to get rid of all that weight and to maintain his muscle tone, right? I don't know, man. That seems a little shady. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.